Today's episode, we're discussing ADHD, trend or truth. So, Sarah, why has this become a debate? Some people think it's a trend, some people think it isn't. And what's the harm of having differing opinions?
Yeah, well, I think that the debate really comes down to looking at, is this real? So we talked about the fact that there are so many more diagnoses we're hearing about in the news, but the timing kind of plays into it. So we've just come off the back of the pandemic, and all of a sudden so many people are being diagnosed. Is that because there are more cases of ADHD, or is ADHD really just the same thing everybody's been going through while they've been isolated, and sort of those mental health challenges and things like that? So there's that. I think also sometimes there's a bit of a legitimate question as to whether or not doctors that are assessing people are actually equipped to do it. So, do they have the skill? Do they know how to apply the test? Are they making sure that they're ruling out all of the other comorbid things associated with ADHD? And so, yeah, I think it's, people just aren't sure whether it is really a condition, when I can tell you it definitely is. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't.
Okay, so what do you think is the biggest hurdle in understanding the condition then?
Well, the symptoms of ADHD are all kind of human experiences, right? So everybody has been late for something.
And they're unique, right? Or are they not unique and everybody has the same symptoms?
Well, so everybody experiences symptoms differently, but what I mean is the symptoms are actually things that other people that don't have ADHD will experience in their lifetime, right? Mm-hmm. So the hurdle becomes, if we have experience, for example, walking into a room and forgetting why you came in there, when someone tells us they have ADHD and they do this, we see the same experience, right? And so we think that they're experiencing the same thing that we are. Mm-hmm. But it really doesn't get to the severity of what ADHD truly is. So I think that is the challenge. We all have that experience in some way, and so we overlay our own experience over what we're told when we hear about ADHD. And it seems just like human inconvenience. You're late, you're distracted, those kinds of things.
So what are a few key facts that we should know about ADHD to lessen the stigma?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's important to understand a few things that we don't see in the news very often about what makes it more severe than just the typical human condition. So one of the things is that you need to actually be impaired. In order to be diagnosed, you have to be impaired in 2 out of 3 major areas in your life. So that can be your social relationships, it can be work, school. And so there needs to be something that is above and beyond what the average person is experiencing day to day. The other thing is that this is primarily an inherited condition, and so it's lifelong. So if you've been overlooked as a child and you're looking for a diagnosis as an adult, you must be able to remember having had these impairments back before you were 12 years old. And so those 2 things kind of start to help you realize that this is much more significant than what we hear in the news day to day, that someone's just a bit distracted. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what does having this condition mean in practice? And how does it affect someone day to day?
Yeah, so really it's our executive functions, so our ability to regulate our emotions or motivate ourselves or plan or keep our impulses under control, or working memory, those kinds of things. So the one part of our brain knows we have to do something, but we're not really able to, the connection between that part of the brain and the part that makes us act is just not as strong as it is in others. So for folks with ADHD, what that looks like is where someone else would be motivated by a task being really important, or there being a reward or a consequence associated with it, someone with ADHD needs to genuinely be interested. So that can look like, I'm talking about something novel, I'm looking at something that's complex. For me, urgency is the number one thing that gets me moving. It has to be on fire, then I'm gonna act for sure. Or you can be passionate. So that's kind of how it plays out day to day.
So how would somebody know that somebody else has ADHD? Because you and I talked earlier, and we talked about the fact that somebody had said to you, well, how did your teachers not tell you?
Yeah.
So how is it that you went all this length without being diagnosed?
It just never occurred to me. Again, I pictured the hyperactive child. I thought that I was doing really well, and I was doing really well. Right? I was successful. I was a senior lawyer. I had, great promotions and titles, and I did well in school. I was getting in 90s. Where's the other 2% was what my dad would always say when I came home with a test, right? Like classic dad. So you don't, it doesn't occur to you. And I think that stigma actually that you were talking about really plays a role because no one wants to have that.
So hold that thought. We will be right back with more ADHD talk when we return. Don't go away.